What would you do if you were seconds away from disaster? Imagine the world turning upside down in an instant. Today, we're diving into the most terrifying, real-life shipwrecks ever caught on camera. These are the final moments before everything changed, when thousands of lives hung in the balance. We've gathered survivor footage, expert analysis, and chilling recordings to show you what it's like when the ocean turns deadly. This is a tribute to those lost, and a stark reminder of the risks at sea. Brace yourself. These are the most horrific shipwrecks ever recorded. Picture yourself on the Costa Concordia, a floating city off the Italian coast. Suddenly, a grinding crash, lights out, panic rising. The ship struck an underwater rock during a risky maneuver, tearing a massive gash in its side. Water flooded in, the ship tilted, and for nearly an hour, the crew insisted it was just a blackout. Passengers watched as the floor became a wall, panic spreading as the ship leaned further. The abandoned ship order came far too late. Chaos erupted. Lifeboats on one side were useless. People jumped into freezing water, desperate to reach shore. The captain, he abandoned ship, leaving hundreds behind. Coast Guard radioed, "Get back on board." He never did. The Costa Concordia ended up half submerged, a haunting monument to failed leadership. 32 lives were lost, all because of a reckless stunt and a captain who ran. The images of that giant ship on its side are unforgettable. It's a lesson in how quickly a celebration can become a nightmare. Survivors recall the terror, the confusion, and the scramble for survival in the dark. The disaster exposed fatal flaws in communication and command. In the end, the Costa Concordia became a symbol of avoidable tragedy. Leadership matters, especially when lives are on the line. This was a disaster that never should have happened. South Korea's MV Seawall ferry carried hundreds of students on a class trip, until a sharp turn and unsecured cargo sent the ship listing. The intercom calmly repeated, "Please do not move from your locations." Obedient students waited, trusting the crew. But the crew panicked and abandoned ship, leaving passengers trapped below. Cell phone footage shows students joking, then growing terrified as the ship tilted further. Life jackets on, they waited for help that never came. Outside, rescue boats arrived, but only those on deck could be saved. Hundreds remained inside, following orders, as the ship slowly sank. The captain and senior crew escaped in civilian clothes, never giving the order to evacuate. The world watched in horror as the Seawall slipped beneath the waves. 304 people died. Most were students who did exactly what they were told. The tragedy was not just the sinking, but the utter failure of leadership and action. Final texts from students to parents are heartbreaking reminders of lost innocence. The Seawall disaster is a national trauma, a symbol of failed authority. It's a lesson. Inaction can be as deadly as any storm. When leadership fails, tragedy follows. Midnight. Baltic Sea. The MS Estonia, packed with nearly 1,000 people, sailed into a storm. The ship's bow door failed, torn off by relentless waves, exposing the car deck to the sea. Water flooded in. Within seconds, the ship listed violently. Passengers were thrown from beds, corridors became vertical climbs, and panic erupted in the darkness. A weak mayday call, "Really bad list, it looks really bad." Then, silence. There was no organized alarm, no clear instructions, just chaos. People scrambled through tilted flooding hallways, many trapped below. The Estonia capsized and sank in less than an hour. Lifeboats couldn't be launched. Survivors faced freezing water and a raging storm, clinging to debris. Out of 989 on board, only 137 survived. 852 perished, most trapped inside. The wreck remains a grave at the bottom of the sea. The speed of the disaster left no time to react. The sea swallowed the ship whole, reminding us how quickly disaster can strike. Survivors recall the terror of darkness, cold, and chaos. The Estonia's fate was sealed by a single design flaw and a storm. Sometimes there's no warning, just the ocean's unforgiving power. The Philippines, 1987. The MV Doña Paz ferry, dangerously overcrowded, collided with the oil tanker MT Vector at night. The tanker's cargo, thousands of barrels of gasoline, ignited instantly. A fireball engulfed both ships, turning the sea into a burning inferno. Passengers awoke to darkness, heat, and chaos. There was no time for alarms or escape. The fire spread in seconds. Trapped passengers faced a horrific choice: burn or jump into flaming water. Life jackets were nowhere to be found. The crew vanished. Survivors described leaping through flames into oil-slicked water, surrounded by screams and fire. Rescue was slow. Authorities didn't even know about the disaster for hours. By the time help arrived, almost nothing remained. The official death toll, 1,749. But with overcrowding, the real number is likely over 4,300. Only 24 survived. This was not just an accident, it was a catastrophe of negligence and ignored safety. The Doña Paz disaster is a haunting warning about the cost of cutting corners. It remains the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in history. Safety regulations exist for a reason. When ignored, the consequences are unthinkable. The RMS Titanic, unsinkable, luxurious, and doomed. On its maiden voyage, it sped through iceberg-laden waters, ignoring warnings. Just before midnight, an iceberg scraped the hull, breaching 5 watertight compartments. The ship was designed to stay afloat with 4 flooded. 5 was fatal. Titanic had only enough lifeboats for half on board. Evacuation was chaotic. Many didn't believe the ship was sinking. Lifeboats launched half empty as panic set in. Glass barriers trapped third-class passengers below deck. The ship broke in two, plunging over 1,500 people into freezing water. Their cries echoed across the Atlantic as lifeboats drifted away. Only 705 survived when rescue arrived. The Titanic's sinking was a disaster of arrogance, poor planning, and ignored warnings. It's a story of human error and the unforgiving sea. The legend endures, not for its luxury, but for the lessons it left behind. Even the unsinkable can be lost in a single night. Senegal's MV La Jula was built for 580 people but carried nearly 2,000 on its final voyage. Overcrowded and unstable, it sailed straight into a violent storm. A powerful gust and wave capsized the ship in under 5 minutes. No time for distress calls or lifeboats. Hundreds were trapped inside as the ship flipped, plunging them into darkness and water. Survivors on the hull waited hours for help, hearing desperate banging from within. Rescue was slow and chaotic. Most didn't even know the ship had sunk until morning. The final death toll, at least 1,163. Only 64 survived. More died on the Jula than on the Titanic. The disaster was caused by ignored safety rules, extreme overcrowding, and a fatal decision to sail in a storm. It's one of the world's deadliest, yet most forgotten, maritime tragedies. Survivors recall the terror of being trapped, the chaos, and the helplessness. The Jula disaster is a warning about the dangers of complacency and neglect. When safety is ignored, disaster is inevitable. The tragedy still haunts Senegal to this day. It's a story the world should never forget. Chicago, 1915. The SS Eastland, tied to the dock, was packed with over 2,500 people for a company picnic. The ship had a history of instability, but that morning, excitement filled the air. As passengers crowded one side, the Eastland began to list. Crew tried to correct it, but within minutes the ship rolled onto its side, in just 20 feet of water. People on deck were thrown into the river, but those below were trapped as water rushed in. Chaos erupted. Furniture, debris, and people tumbled as the world turned upside down. Rescuers heard screams from inside and rushed to cut through the hull. Bystanders jumped in, pulling survivors from the water, but for many, it was too late. The ship had rolled so quickly, escape was impossible. 844 people died, including entire families, just feet from safety. The Eastland disaster is Chicago's deadliest tragedy. It's a chilling reminder. Disaster can strike anywhere, even at the dock. Safety isn't just for the open sea, it's for every journey. The Eastland story is a warning about ignoring known risks. Sometimes the calmest waters hide the greatest dangers. These disasters are more than stories, they're warnings. In seconds, lives change forever. From the Titanic to the Eastland, human error, negligence, and ignored safety cost thousands of lives. Remember these lessons. Safety protocols save lives and leadership matters. Honor the victims by learning from the past. Stay safe and never take a calm journey for granted.